Go.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome back. This is our dialogue section of the service today. And did you transfer the video? There you go. Look at that. My computer's just lagging behind.
Yeah, you day late there.
All right, I'm good. All right, so I started a new series today on the tribes, and this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. Mainly because for 30 years now, it has been part of my biblical awareness. I think that, one of the things that I really wanted to do before I started this, and we had a good, lively discussion during the break, and the reason that it was lively is because I spent a lot of time leading up to this class to say, look, Isaiah 56 says, don't let the stranger say that he's not part of this, because here's what can happen. This is sort of a caution. What can happen when people get into this is they see the significance and importance of Israel, and you should. And they begin to say, but I'm not, so what about me? I'm born in Louisiana, I grew up Baptist or Methodist or Catholic, and what about me? I mean, what is my place? So I spent many months stressing things like Psalm 22, where it talks about all the ends of the earth will turn to Jehovah, and so forth. So I spent plenty of time doing that because I want people to know that anyone who turns to Jehovah can be part of the plan. Just like in the Exodus. In the Exodus, there was a mixed multitude. Whenever we begin to talk about Israel, which we're going to really start in the patriarchal narratives next week, people just have to follow us along because we're going to unpack this thing over a series of months. But anyway, with that introduction, today's class, I really just wanted to kind of touch on the idea about the name change and who is Israel? Who is this person, and how is it that an ancient story can reverberate into these prophecies, which we're going to be digging into just really all out. So Sylvia is posting the verses, and I know the Tylers do that as well. So thanks for that. It helps us out a lot. People can keep up that way. But everybody's familiar. Isaiah 56 is something that I like to stress. One of the things in Isaiah 56, it says, "For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." Israel has a mission, and that mission involves being a light to the nation, a covenant of the people, to spread the knowledge of the one God and of his ways to the entire globe. Having said that, the point that I'm going to get into is that I'm going to make this very clear in the next few weeks, that a large portion of Israel has lost their identity. They've been totally absorbed into the world around them and no longer know who they are. So the only thing that this class does is it suggests that a large group of people who are waking up among the nations with no known genetic connection to ancient Israel, all of a sudden, and I say all of a sudden, over the past couple of decades in particular, people have in huge numbers started turning to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this brings me to our text in Isaiah 44. Something is happening where people are waking up, I'm going to say, and they're saying, I'm Israel. I feel like I'm Israel. I have people that call me sometimes and they'll say, look, I feel like I belong to such and such tribe. I don't get into that. That's above my pay grade. I just know that the Bible describes this awakening, and we're witnessing an awakening. Is it the one that the Bible talks about? If it's not, then what the Bible describes and what's going on, if those aren't synonymous, if they don't go together, then when the real one happens, it's going to look a lot like what's going on now. That's my introduction.
So, yeah, I'm trying to capitalize on what you're specifically talking about rather than the big picture, though, because I know you have many classes you want to do on this, and I don't want to jump the gun on any of this.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so, you talk about the awakening. I'm reminded of several times in the history, recent past history, they've had what they call great awakenings.
Yeah.
Different religions or denominations.
Revival type.
Revivals and so on and so forth. So, I'm trying to wonder if maybe that's what's happening now. Is there something been going on?
Excellent point.
To me, though, it seems like it's a slower thing. It's a slower, more consistent.
Yep.
Rather than just a sudden thing that's here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's more of a...
Has substance to it.
Yeah. So, having said that, I don't want to get into the citizenship of the country of Israel at this point, because that's a different matter.
Yep.
One recognizing the other one doing this. But what's important is that people are coming to some kind of understanding or have an idea or just an umption. I think that's what you're really talking about here is an umption. Where do I fit? That's kind of the thing.
Let's focus on your first part, the awakening. And that's a good point. Throughout history, as you said, there have been what people would refer to as great moves of God, revivals that lasted.
Spirit moves.
Yeah, spiritual enlightenment. Some might look at the Reformation and say that was a move away from a particular sort of a crushing type religion where people were kept in the dark, if you will. And then over a period of time, certain things came about that allowed people to take the Bible on their own and begin to read it. Now, one thing that's important is that when we think of the biblical faith, let's say that the world's population is, let's say, close to 8 billion. That's what it is now. 8 billion on the planet. I remember, James is revising RAF as soon as he finishes with his book. We hope to put that out again and so forth. His new book he's working on now. But in there, and this book was written, when was it published the last time? I don't remember the date. But it says about 5 billion people on the planet, right? Well, now they're close to 8. Now, there are large, like billions of people on the planet that know nothing about the Bible. They know nothing about the Bible. And so the question becomes, is that intentional? So I go back to my church days. I was telling these guys during break, I remember one day a guy said in a Sunday school class, years and years ago, obviously, people that know me know this, and a guy said, well, what about all those people that have never heard the gospel? What happens to them? And the person that they were discussing this with said, well, they go to hell. And the other person said, well, man, that's not fair. How is that fair? These people have never even had a chance. He goes, hey, I'm sorry, but, that's our fault. The other gentleman said, what do you mean it's our fault? Well, we should have had missionaries reach them or whatever. He's like, but we didn't. And he goes, I know. So they're in hell? Yeah, and this back and forth. Now, we might look at that now and go, well, that's kind of silly. But think about this. Let's turn it in this sense. What about the billions that have never heard a message based on the Hebrew Bible? Now, it's interesting, and we're going to get into this as we study this out. Look, I'm not teaching any of these racist type approaches to the lost tribes. Like some of these groups are very, very racist. They're like, it's the white Anglo-Saxon people and that's it.
Rams and, you know.
But I will say, and I'll get into some of this, I'll say it like this at first. Amos chapter 9 says that God took this people and he scattered them throughout all nations as corn is sifted through a sieve, yet not the least grain fell to the ground. In other words, this is a total dispersion. Like they're scattered literally all over the globe. Ultimately, that's where the scattering took place. We'll get into the details of that. But there are historical and different things that we can trace where these tribes predominantly went. Like we know.
What kind of travel
And so, while people who follow like Yair Davidi and Brit and all these things, what they're picking up on is they're not making this up. There is substantial evidence that the large majority of the children of Israel, when they went into their dispersions, went in certain directions and from there were spread abroad, right? So, for instance, in the book of Hosea, it says that the children will come trembling from the west. Now, if you're in the land of Israel and where is west? Is that an ice cream truck or what?
Well, it's telephone or something.
Oh, is it a telephone?
It's mine, I think, but I got.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I got it muted as much
Oh,
as
it's
possible.
no problem. No problem. So that's the thing. It's like we know biblically where these tribes went and who, to some degree. But again, I want to stress because there are some people who say, "Well, I'm Oriental, or I'm black, or I'm Hispanic, or I'm." Look, here's the truth of the matter. You couldn't identify this group based on physical features if you tried. Like there's not going to be something where people go, well, Ross, you're certainly not Israelite because your nose isn't right or your skin is too light in tone.
We've all heard this, because this has been going on for a little while, as far as what we're kind of aware of. And so usually there's like, I got to do a DNA test and a family search test and so on and so forth to try to prove that they're Jewish of some sort, their ancestry, or so on and so forth. But I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Right.
I think we're talking about more of a worldwide idea of people awakening.
Yeah.
And I don't really like to use that term because it's more like an awareness, I guess, is a better way of saying it. Just or can you say a possibility or just I remember when I first started thinking about these things and I Googled, the lost tribes. It's come up with all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But it just makes you wonder. So wondering, how's that?
Yeah.
So
when I
I'm
talk-
part of this, I'm wondering if I'm part of that.
Yeah. And so some people would say, well, you can't prove it. You can't prove, like a lot of people say, well, you can't. There are people who doubt the veracity of all sorts of biblical stories. So that's.
I can't prove I'm awake right now.
But
I might be dreaming.
yeah. But the idea though is when you look at these texts, you come away with certain things which become apparent. The preponderance of evidence, let's say. And so whenever we look at the text and we talk about this special group that God chose,
Right.
Israel, and they have a very specific task. And then if you read the Bible from Genesis to Malachi or from Genesis to 2 Chronicles, depending on the order of your Hebrew Bible books, what you come away with is a very complete portrait of this people. Now, if you look at the modern state of Israel, for instance, I believe that the modern state of Israel is the beginning of the fulfillment of prophecy, of the bringing back of God's people according to His promise. And I believe that it's in the order in which the Scriptures portray it. In other words, I can show where Judah will go first. We're going to get into the different designations for Israel. See, a lot of people And this is what gets me. And I was in the same place, but by the grace of God, I was shown this almost 3 decades ago, and now I can see it fairly clearly, and anyone can once it's shown to them. Now, here's the thing. Whenever you start to, people will sometimes say, well, you have 2 choices. You're either Jewish or you're Gentile. Those are your 2 options. And what people say is, I'm not Jewish, therefore I'm a Gentile. Now, this particular choice, these 2 choices are basically the only options available to most people. The Bible presents another choice. Now, among the nations, scattered among the nations, having lost their identity, having become absorbed into other families, other groupings, they no longer have any connection whatsoever. This option, it says in scriptures very plainly, the reason I use awakening, or you said awareness, in English, in Deuteronomy 30, it says, when you come to yourself. Listen, let's read that. Deuteronomy 30, I'm going to just read one verse here just to make this point. Deuteronomy 30, and we're going to fully expound on these at a later point. And it will come to pass when all these things are come upon you. By the way, this is Moses addressing the children of Israel before they even go into the land. When all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you call them to mind among the nations wherever Jehovah your God has driven you, and you shall return to Jehovah your God and shall obey his voice according to all that I command you this day, so forth and so on. Then he's going to turn the captivity, he's going to bring them back. In the Hebrew, it says, when you return to your heart. Now, this group, they hadn't even gone in the land yet, and he goes, the blessing is going to come upon you and the curse, and a big part of that curse of the Torah is that you'll be scattered throughout all nations. You're going to lose your identity.
Even to the islands.
You're in a sense, this group of people becomes Gentiles. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of this, but we're going to get into classes, full classes on it. Let me give you one quick story that I think most of you are familiar with that kind of sets it straight. Hosea, the prophet Hosea, is a prophet to the northern kingdom of Israel. You have Israel in the north, and you have Judah in the south. Judah in the south. Now, there's some mixing going on. It's not exact, but roughly we'll define that as we work through these classes.
And that's basically the 2 house.
2 house, yeah, exactly.
And just to go on a little rabbit hunt there, I don't really necessarily see the 2 houses as continuing on. Now, I could be wrong. I'd have to search all that. Ultimately, it looks like it's just going to be 1 house.
Well, that ultimately, yeah. But
yeah.
the purpose of this teaching is to go through that intermediate phase.
Okay.
So right now, when we look at Israel as they're observable to the modern eye, we see the remnants of Judah, Benjamin, Levi, those tribes which are associated with Judah.
Yeah.
So you have 2 dispersions. One in 722, you have the northern kingdom is taken by Assyria, and they're taken into the exile, and ultimately that 10-tribe kingdom, roughly 10, is scattered throughout all nations. They lose their identity. 722 BCE. 586, the southern kingdom of Judah and those tribes associated, notice I'm being careful, those southern tribes that are associated with Judah, they are taken captive by the Babylonians in 586. They're taken to Babylon for 70 years, and they return in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah.
Some of them return. Not all
Some.
of them.
That's right. That's right. Now, you still have remnants of these 2 dispersions, 2 main dispersions, and they're scattered all over the place, and they've lost their identity. They've intermarried and so forth. What the prophets say is going to happen is that at a certain point in history, God's word is coming to pass, and they will come to themselves. So Hosea, he's to the northern tribes. Hosea has 3 children. He's told, I want Hosea, go marry a harlot. And he does. Her name is Gomer. And Hosea marries her, and he has 3 children through Gomer. Now, the whole reason that this is acted out in poor Hosea's life is to teach lessons and to share a prophetic picture. God tells Hosea, I want you to know what I feel like. Your wife is going to be promiscuous just like my wife, Israel, is. So he names the children. Here's what he's told to name his children. Jezreel, God will scatter. The next child is called Lo Ruchama, no mercy. And the last child is called Lo Ami, not my people. Now, it's very clear in Hosea, this is a subject of an entire class, the tribes become scattered. Remember, Hosea is to the northern kingdom. They become scattered, they receive no mercy. But in the text, in Hosea, it says, but to Judah I will show mercy. See, he distinguishes between the two. They'll have mercy, but not this other group. And finally, this group is told, the northern kingdom, you are to become Lo Ami, not my people. Now, so they lose their identity. They're become not God's people. Meanwhile, the house of Judah continues. When we see Israel today, and it's not strict. You know, you made this point, Dave, when we were talking. Some of these tribes kind of mix back in, and some flee from the north and get in with the south. And
it's really important to recognize that in the land of Israel right now, they don't really go with the tribe thing. They don't have Jewish people or nationalities in that area saying, "Oh, I'm the tribe of this and I'm the tribe of that." They don't have separate lands or separate that. It's a mix.
And it's interesting too that when the modern state of Israel, when they selected a name, they called it the Land of Israel. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this. In the Declaration of Israel's independence, it says the land of Israel will be open to Jewish immigration. We know who the Jews are. When they immigrate back, they're welcome, right? And to the ingathering of the exiles.
Right.
Now, presently, they've only enacted phase 1 of that. Now, this is something I found when I was reading the Declaration of Independence. It's saying, if you're Jewish and can prove that you're Jewish, you know, and you can document that your family is truly Jewish, you can apply for and many times be granted citizenship and move to the land of Israel. Make aliyah, go up. This other group who is waking up among the nations, what are they going to do? Like, let's say that I think that I might be, trying to be careful, Dave.
No,
I might be from one of the tribes. I don't know which, but I feel like I might be Israel. And I go to the powers that be and say, you know, I'd like to come back to Israel. And they'd say, okay, what's your name? My name is Ross Nichols. Are you Jewish? No, but I'm an Israelite.
I feel like I am.
I feel like I might be an Israelite. And they'd say, well, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And I said, well, look, I was just reading my Bible and, you know, I kind of felt this inner unction that I might be. And they'd say, you know, we thank you for your support of Israel, but you got to be Jewish to get in.
And then you go the conversion route.
You can convert. You can become Jewish. In fact, there is a large percentage within Judaism today. I've read various figures, but one says 6% or more of the modern Jews are converts. People who feel an irresistible draw to the people of Israel, but they don't have any connection other than to say, I'm going to convert. And some authorities say that's your only way. And presently, I should add, that is the only way. But what if the prophets are true?
For legal immigration.
Yeah, that's right. What if the prophets are true? What if, scattered among the nations, a group of people exist that have lost their identity? They've wandered from their resting place. They have forgotten their fold. That's the way the prophets call it. They think of themselves as lo ami. They're not his people. What if that's really existing today? And what if this group of lo ami is waking up? I'm using terms that I think associate what I'm trying to convey. There's something in their heart tells them, I feel like I might be, and they begin. So the reason I haven't focused as much on this detailed study is because I wanted to stress for many years now that anyone who seeks to follow the ways of God and associate with his people and his covenant can do so. The plan has always been open. Isaiah 56 is the greatest example. But that doesn't negate the fact that the single greatest topic, or the single most prevalent topic in all of the prophets, is the return of Israel, both houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. So I believe, just to kind of put another, maybe put a little bit more rain around it, presently in the world, let's say there are 20 million Jews in the world. And there might be more. I don't know the exact figure. If the division is roughly, just say 10 to 1, which we'll talk about that because that's what the prophets say. 10 to 1, that would make 200 million of these others who've lost their identity. Now, people go, well, what if I'm not one of them? You're okay. Anyone who seeks to... But again, the question becomes, who is it that's going to wake up and come to themselves and follow the pattern that people like you are following?
It's really kind of a strange thing because if you seek, you will find. And it's kind of a... I don't know how else to put it. If you're looking...
Yeah.
You're looking.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the point, Dave. So think about this. Who does the Bible say will search for him with all their heart and all their soul and all their mind? See, again, what we want to do as we work through these prophecies is say, if you listed, here's my current quest, me, you, anyone who's listening, you go, this is my path to where I am now, and you start creating this journey of yours. What if I could show you that your journey, John Langberg, looks similar to Pam's, looks similar to Dave's, looks similar to Laura and Brian on the internet today, looks similar to these other people? What if we all started following the same? Interestingly enough, very interesting. Here's a funny thing. This always gets me. When I talk to people who are currently in the Torah faith movement, and I say, what happened to you? And they say, well, I was just a good Catholic kid, and, I just never felt like something was right, and as I got older, this is just a hypothetical. Yeah. You go, well, what was it that drew you to the Hebrew faith? And they'll say, almost without exception, I just felt like Sunday wasn't the right day.
The Sabbath.
I was drawn to the Sabbath or the festivals or the dietary laws, or I would read something in the Hebrew Bible and it would say this is forever, and my preacher said it wasn't.
People want to know they want to know the truth, and they want to act on that truth. They want to do the truth. In other words, people ask, what are we supposed to do? Well, it starts out, you want to do the truth, and part of doing the truth is the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It just falls into place like a puzzle.
Yep.
Now what's the next step? What's the next step? Further on.
Yep. Now, the point. Now, let me make it clear. One of the things that I tried to stress, and I don't want to lose this, is in Psalm 22. If you go to Psalm 22, let's see, verse 27. This is an example of something that I've stressed. So people don't get so caught up in, well, I've got to be one of these tribes, right? It says, all the ends of the earth shall remember and turn unto Jehovah, and all the families of the nations shall worship before thee, for the kingdom is Jehovah's, and he is ruler over the nations. Again, Isaiah 56, Isaiah chapter 2, Micah chapter 4, Zechariah, all these prophecies look forward to a time when Israel is modeling the way in such a way that the nations of the world say, I'm drawn to that. And, you know, in Zechariah 14, for instance, literally every nation has to send a delegate to Jerusalem, according to Zechariah 14, to keep the festival of Sukkot and to worship the King, Jehovah of hosts, in Jerusalem. Now, the point being this: Israel has a job to do, but much of Israel has lost its identity. They're going to be waking up. The prophets predict that Israel will come together, Israel and Judah will come together, and then they together, as all the tribes, all of Israel, Kol Israel, will then go and make Aliyah, basically. And then it says in Isaiah 56, and others will be gathered to them besides those that are gathered.
Yeah. So that fits right into
Yep.
the 1948, you know, the nation of Israel coming forth.
Yep.
And then, you know, being gathered together, and then, as you say, others will be added
Yep.
to this.
That's right.
It's kind of, now, is that the job of every one of us to move to Israel? I mean, that's always comes up, whether I should or shouldn't, or, you know.
Well, right now you couldn't
can't,
anyway.
can't, you know,
You can't anyway,
you
so
can't
that
anyway,
solves
so
that.
You can visit.
Look, people, great
Maybe.
question. Yeah, we have. But people look at the question, you know, and they look at the scripture and they say, okay, how is this going to play out? I mean, ultimately the prophets say that there'll be so many of the Israelites living in Israel that they'll say, we don't even have enough room for us here. We're going to spill over into Gilead and spill over. And look, it's not like that now. You can drive up and down in a tour bus. By the way, join James Tabor and I will be going in February and March. You're welcome to join us and we'll show you. But there's plenty of open real estate now. But again, there's not that many who've made Aliyah yet, you know. So, and that doesn't even include these masses. Remember two things. In the Declaration of Independence, the Jewish state will be open, the state of Israel will be open to Jewish immigration and the ingathering of the exiles. I love that they put that in there because it opens the door for the prophetic fulfillment. Not like the true prophet who stood up would need the Declaration of Independence to back up what he needs to do. I mean, that's not necessary, but still.
Tough ones. So what's next on your teaching?
But United Israel, let me say this. United Israel World Union, this organization was founded in 1944. And even in the name, it testifies to the great biblical fulfillment of the prophets. And that is that a united Israel must take place first. And then...
And they're still working on that.
Exactly. And then a world union can come.
Remember, there was some talk in one of the business meetings about shortening the name, just the UA or...
Yeah, UI, United
Israel.
Israel.
Easy to come off your tongue and say.
The UA's already taken.
Yeah, well, probably so.
Yeah, United Israel. We
Yeah.
a lot of times we even shorten our name. We say, well, we're with United Israel. In fact, our website, unitedisrael.org.
UIWU just doesn't come off the tongue as easy. When you're having a conversation with a stranger that doesn't know anything about it, you're trying to explain what little group you're in. UA is,
UI.
UI, whatever it is. But it
Not
was voted
United
down.
Art-
No,
not
you know,
United Artists.
That was the big deal, though. United Israel, World Unity. It actually means something. It's
Yeah.
a sentence. It's an idea.
Now, the other thing that comes up, so this is a major point for United Israel World Union, is the teaching that scattered among the nations are this group that have lost their identity. Now, some people say, in fact, Vicki points out, she said, I understand the goal, but for now, right now, here in the U.S., my goal is united monotheism and Torah and keeping my heart open.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the point is, and this is why my primary teaching over the past more than a decade now has been on what should people do, regardless of any of this, in order to draw near unto God according to the text. Listen, learn, guard, do, seek to live your life according to the Torah. All those fundamental, basic, foundational teachings are the bedrock, the foundation of our faith. If anything else is just added to that, in other words, the essential point is that we seek to live our life according to the covenants. Isaiah 56. Just come on in. I don't care if you're a Hittite, Canaanite, Perizzite, or a lost person from the tribe of Zebulun. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Right? We could leave it at that. Except that the Bible screams that we can't. The Bible says, but what about this group? Where is this group? Without this group coming to the land of Israel and taking their rightful place in the land among God's people, there is only at best a small percentage of prophetic fulfillment. Now let me add this.
Right.
Prior to the reestablishment of the start of Israel, the modern Jewish state, prior to that, there were people who had become in such a place that they began to allegorize. That Israel, as a place, you could use any old place. That the people Israel, it's not that important, any old person. And then, as God began in His mercy and in His powerful hand to bring about things which on the surface most would look at and say, there's no way. There's no way. But these prophecies began, I believe, to be fulfilled in the modern days. Now people had to go, wait a minute. So if there really are representatives of Israel who really are being brought back to the land, who really are beginning to establish a foothold in the land that God promised to the patriarchs, then what if, just bear with me, John, what if the rest of this is true? What if? What if there really are people who are waking up, who are feeling drawn in their heart, who are beginning to ascribe to themselves the name Israel, who are really beginning to, what if they really are? Now, I know that there are people who go, well, just go get a DNA test. Some of my good friends say this. And some of them have done that, and their DNA matches other Jewish people.
That don't mean you're going to get in, though.
It doesn't mean that. No, first of all, it doesn't mean that at all. You have to go through a formal, recognized conversion, and there's a lot of other stipulations. But just so. Now, the question becomes, do all Jewish people, I'm not talking about converts, I'm talking about do all known genetic Jews, do all of their paternal DNAs point to the same person? And some would say yes. In other words, I don't know if they think that's pointing at Jacob himself or what. But my point is that some of these genetic studies have shown that within Kol Israel, there are different genetic makeups, you know? And this is a great mixing pot, and I don't claim to be scientific in the least. In fact, the only thing scientific about me is I do have a son that's a doctor, but he didn't inherit that from me. But I don't. Other than that, I'm not a scientist.
But ultimately, all that stuff it really doesn't matter now. It just doesn't matter. I mean, it's interesting. I like it. It's cool, but it's not what I would consider a proof point. It's not a proof point.
What's not?
The DNA stuff, the genetic
Right.
studies, and
Well, because
so on. And even,
Esau had the same DNA.
even the maternal way they do it now with the
Yeah.
mother.
He wasn't Israel.
Yep.
Right.
And one of Abraham's sons
Well, I
wasn't
like-
Israel.
I like to point out, and this is part of what we get into in
He
this
has
class, to
DNA.
get the terminology right, John, to your point. Abraham was not a Jew.
Yeah.
Abraham was not an Israelite. In fact, Joshua 24 says that Abraham and his fathers were worshiping other gods across the way, right? You can read it for yourself. It says, and there they worshiped other gods. Abraham comes across, he responds to the call, Genesis 12, Lech Lecha, walk for yourself, and so forth, and then, but he's called a Hebrew, though. Now, there are just different discussions as to what is the etymology of Hebrew. Ivri, what does Ivri mean? Ivri, avar means to cross, so is he the one who crossed over? That could be the meaning of the word. Some associate it with the passing from the line of Eber in the genealogies in Genesis 10. But the idea is that Abram was a Hebrew, but he wasn't an Israelite. Isaac is a Hebrew, but he's not an Israelite, and there is no such thing at their point as a Jew. Then you have Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel. Israel is the father of 12 boys who represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And then within that group, and this is going to be really fully expounded over the next weeks and months, then you have within that group of 12, these people are Israelites and they're Hebrews, but not all of them are Jews.
So,
Some of them are.
what?
And so I think it's real important that as we walk this through and as we unpack this, that people understand. Because one of the things I started with in this dialogue is people often think there are two choices. You're either Jewish or you're Gentile. But there's a whole nother group. There's an option
You could-
that people
you could
don't
be
see.
Hebrew.
Huh?
Be Hebrew.
You could be Hebrew.
You can claim to be Hebrew in your orientation.
That's right. And
Yeah.
you don't,
They-
if you follow the terminology of crossover,
Yeah,
which is what Abraham, he took hold of God and he crossed over.
Yeah.
So, to your point, if and we don't, you don't know who these people are
yep,
when the awakening happens. Some are going to be part of that awakening, and some are not. Even if you're not, if like Abraham, you take hold of the Creator, you're
that's
there.
my Isaiah
You're
56 guy. Yep.
You're there.
That's right. That's right. And some people go, look, I'm just satisfied with that. That's fine. But as I pointed out earlier in the break, because I get so passionate about this, I'm all for that. It's what I've taught for years. Look, you just be happy wherever you're at, whoever you are. It doesn't matter. You can be whatever. You're okay. Now, imagine when they wanted to make the film The Titanic. Even if my example was bad before, I'm going to do it again. And you
Or
go,
Wizard of Oz, what you say.
yeah, if you say the Titanic, I want to do the story of the Titanic, right? I want to have the girl, the beautiful girl with the jewel. I want to have the guy that she falls in love with. I like that part of the story. I want to have everything, but I don't want the ship to sink.
Right.
You're like, well, that's kind of the point of the Titanic. Maybe we could call it something else. No. So in other words, my point
Was that really the Titanic that sunk?
my point is, it's like the main point of the story is that Israel has got to come together. And in order for that to be part of what we see, Israel has to come to themselves. Now, I saw a few minutes ago, let's read this. Sylvia says, the Great Commission, if you will, she's got it in quotes, is to promote the three necessary aspects to this movement: one God, Torah, and Israel, the land and the people. Now, what we've focused on so far for many, many years now is one God and Torah faith. Now, essentially, that is the key driving force behind the message. Because if a person is an Isaiah 56 person, or if they're an Awakening Tribes person, they've got to turn towards the one God and to His ways. Right? Doesn't matter. It's ultimately the Torah will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem to all the nations. Nations will stream to learn of His ways, absolutely. But at the center of the picture, just like in the movie, is the main event. And the main event involves a people that were promised progeny and land. More numerous than the sands of the sea. Your descendants will be as the stars of the heaven. And you're like, well, there are millions and billions of stars. And you're like, well, yeah, but we're just talking about a few million. No, it's an incredible host.
Sand stuff too, man.
A lot of
Maybe
sand.
they
A lot of sand.
You break a lot of rocks to make sand.
And so, to the prophets, basically, in the scriptures, in a nutshell, are saying, look, something big is going to happen, and it's going to take place out there. Before everything else can unfold, this has to happen. In other words, that being the awakening and the turning to.
It's a major step in the process.
That's right.
Yes. And
So it's all big part of the big picture.
now, what I don't want is people to begin looking in the mirror and saying, well, I'm not one of those people because I'm not white, Anglo-Saxon, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that whoever this people is, whoever are among these people, they are so grafted in that they are so intermixed that they're going to be, like I remember the song as a little boy, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. And again, I can't understress this, if a person has no genetic connection whatsoever, they're still welcome in. Attach yourself to the covenant, which is all we can do for certain at this point anyway. Like if they set up 12 gates at the Ben Gurion and said, you got to walk through one of the gates.
Real long gates. And it's hot.
I love it when I get in the line for, well, I don't really love the passport control. But you know, when you get there, it says Israeli, and then there's another line that says stranger. Well, it's for the
You want to make
Gentiles.
sure you really want to come into this country.
And you got to pick one. Well, what if in days to come you still have the stranger gate, but you have the Judah, Benjamin, Levi, you know, all the different
Dan's
tribes.
way down there.
Excuse me. So,
Wait a minute. Not if it's alphabetical.
Yeah, but who's alphabet? No.
now what we also want to remember is that Israel is not some purebred, like,
Right.
let me make
Not
this
a
point.
race. Not a race.
So Abraham chooses wives, right? You have Sarah, you have Keturah, you have these, and their descendants. Bring it on down to Israel now. He has Rachel and Leah, who are basically from the region which is like modern Syria, I guess you would say. And then there are two handmaids. Now we don't know where they come from. I mean, just don't know. We don't know any way to know that. We're not told. And then as you break it on down, you have Judah intermarries, you have Joseph, let's use Joseph. Joseph is taken into Egypt, and he marries the
Egyptian.
priest daughter, the priest of On's daughter, Asnat, and she is an Egyptian. So Ephraim and Manasseh are mixed. Again, this is so far from racial. So
Yeah, that's the point.
it's like, look, there's such a mixing even in the
and
patriarchal
Abraham
marriage.
had two sons.
Yeah.
One of them clearly wasn't going in the line towards Israel.
Well, and we're going to trace that as we work through these classes. I think next week what I want to do is I want to begin at the beginning. I wanted to introduce this idea of Israel and bring in a few prophecies and a few things just to make people start to think. But I want to talk about Abraham's seed. And look, there is a great, I'm going to tell you that this great awakening, and a lot of people are going to go, oh, I can't believe he just said that. You can't say that. You're in the Torah faith. Look, if most people would raise their hand right now, you know how some of these things have some of these electronic meeting things let you raise your hand. If I said right now, where you're at, I want you to raise your hand. If you weren't born Jewish, raise your hand. You know, you guys do it. You do it. You're right here.
Right hand?
Yeah, right hand. Now, if your journey began in some form of Christianity, keep your hand up. Now, I've done this before to rooms full of people. Now, sometimes we have Jewish people who are listening. I was
Put your
born
hand down.
Jewish. Yep.
Yep.
So something is going on within the rank and file of Christianity. And listen, I'm not scared to talk about it. I'm going to fully get into this, and I'm going to hit it hard. Used to, for many years, I kind of shied away from this teaching, and I thought, there are people out there who said, I don't know, we can't prove it, therefore we're not going to talk about it. Look, you can't prove that a donkey talked, but we talk about that. You can't prove much of this, but we talk about it.
Show me a talking snake, I believe.
I've been studying, like many of you, for decades now, and I am no longer worried at all about somebody saying, well, that goes against the standard understand. I'm going to share with people my understanding of these prophecies, and some of this I've never discussed publicly, and I'm going to get into it all. But we're going to do it based on the text. I'm going to look at a text, and we're going to look at what's going on in the world around us, and we're going to say, is it a match? Is it not a match? And I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting, and I hope that a lot of people get into this as much as I do.
To put a finer point on what you said earlier, when I went to Israel last year, and while I was there at a couple of different places with you and without you, and also Jerusalem, I noticed a lot of people of different skin shades and different hair colors and eye colors that are there now that are Israeli citizens, that it's already a mix that's there.
Oh, it is.
You can't just say that this is what the typical Israeli looks like today, because it won't work.
That's right.
No.
Yep.
So that condition's already there. You can't just say, well, you couldn't possibly be because you don't have olive oil skin, or you don't have white skin, or whatever. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it is vast, and the majority of people who are coming into this movement come from Christianity. Sylvia brings up something I wrote about years and years ago on the prodigal son, the story from the Gospel of Luke. It is an amazing correlative text that almost fits exactly. In fact, I've shown that it fits exactly with the story of the tribes, So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into all of these things. I'll bring in text from the Christian writings. I'll bring in text from rabbinic sources, because it is essential. I am feeling pressed to cover this material because there are people who are hungry for answers, and there are people right now, as we speak, who are saying, just like Isaiah 44 says, I'm Israel. And you know, when you think about it, this text that I brought in, when Jacob, in chapter 32 of Genesis, when Jacob is returning to the land, it says that he goes to a place called Mahanaim, and I covered this in my teaching today. If you missed it, you can go back and hear it. And at Mahanaim, he says, when I left, I just took my staff, and now I've become two camps. I'm saying that's a picture of what is to come. And Song of Songs, this great allegory between God and his lover, his people, his bride, he says, return, return, O restored one, return, return. What would you see when you look at the restored one but the dance of the twin camps? This idea is that as they come back and they come to themselves, they will be in two camps. And what we have to do is identify, based on the biblical narratives and the prophecies and the text, who is this group? How will you identify them? Look, some people go, it's useless, it's hopeless, but yet they'll spend countless days and years of their life looking for what the text described the Messiah is going to do. You know how much is written in literature, Christian, Dead Sea Scrolls, rabbinic literature on the Messiah? This is mentioned. How many times, by the way, how many times is the word Messiah mentioned in the Hebrew Bible to refer to this messianic figure? 0. And yet more is written on this than any subject. How many times is Israel mentioned in Scripture? Lots. And people are like, we can't figure that out. Oh, you're going to figure out something that's not even mentioned in the text, but you can't figure out something that we have ample clues? So I'm excited.
So somehow or other, when the awakening does occur, for those that don't know,
That aren't awake.
When it's complete.
somehow, some way, because it's in their constitution, when you show up, they're going to go, oh, you belong in the Israel line.
Is it fair?
Don't know how, but
Yep.
Is
Is it fair what?
Is it fair to say that until
That's why
this
they're
awakening
trying to figure
is
that out?
realized, until it's accepted, then the prophecy
Gotta bring a
cannot
red
be
cow with you.
complete?
Until this is realized, yes, the prophecy is not complete.
So right now, we're talking about it, but it's not a realized thing. It's not accepted on the whole from either side of the camp, if you will say.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's exactly
Until
right.
it is, the prophecy has not been fulfilled.
I'll say it this way, because of a meeting that happened in a hotel in Jerusalem, a rabbi gave me a flyer, a poster. And at the top of the flyer it says, until Joseph returns,
Yeah.
there is no prophetic fulfillment.
Yes.
Now, partial fulfillment, yes, but Scripture says that both houses will come together. Both houses. And until that takes place, the ultimate fulfillment has not been achieved. Miriam brings up, Romans 11 states that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. We're going to talk about that too. Look, there are people who think, well, you shouldn't talk about that. Look, these texts, which caused part of the awakening, have to be discussed.
Yes.
I'm going to have a class where I pull all of that material from rabbinic writings and talk about it. I'm going to take a class and put together where all of the Christian writings, the text in the Christian writings, and all of that points to this subject matter. This is a leave no stone unturned study. Next week we begin with Abraham because we can't miss the clues, and we're going to work our way through. And who knows? I mean, I think that this message will spread, and I think more people will be interested in it. And the worst case scenario, get this, is that more people are at least convinced to seek to follow God in the Torah. And they may say, look, I don't know. I mean, all I can say for certain is I don't know. The preponderance of evidence leads me to certain conclusions, but I really don't know, honestly, like you said, Dave.
Can't prove it.
Can't prove it, but here's what I can do. In the meantime, as Vicky said, and I'm paraphrasing what she said, but I can live my life. I've got the heart thing down. I can seek to live my life according to these and wait. But in the meantime, I want to research and dig and look at the clues and say, does it fit? So there's quite a bit, by the way, to Miriam's point about the fullness of the Gentiles. In Hebrew, it's melo hagoyim. That phrase is only used one time in ancient literature other than Romans 11, and it comes from the Torah, from the patriarchal narratives. I will show you where Israel is to be called a fullness of the Gentiles. Now, did Paul know this? That's a good question. People can say, I don't like Paul. Okay, that's fine. I'm just talking about literature. Some people don't like what the rabbis say. Some people don't. Look, if you look hard enough in this world, you're going to find somebody that doesn't like anything. You can pass out lollipops and some people won't be happy. So,
Color there.
huh?
I don't like
that flavor. That's right. So, if as we work through this material, there's going to be quite a bit that I think will surprise people. There will be some things which will confirm what people have felt. This will probably raise the hair on the back of the neck of some people who don't like this approach, and who might take an opposing stand to it, and that's okay too. But what I would encourage people is, if you're interested in this study, help me share this message. I don't get out every day and say, please, please, please share this link, but I'm doing it with this series because it has been a long time in the coming, and it is time to lay this out, and I would love for people to help me through Facebook and social media to share that I'm teaching on the tribes every Saturday morning and to join us, either in person at the UI Center South here in St. Francisville, or on YouTube or Facebook. Dave's got it set up where we simulcast. If you hate Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, join us on YouTube.
It's a two-house deal.
It's a two-house deal. You get to choose what you want.
2/10.
That's right.
One of these days, it's going to be just one. It's going to be one.
It's going to be the Kingdom of Israel's broadcast network.
Let YouTube and Facebook fight it out.
And I would like to just qualify there with what you said earlier, Dave. Bringing the red cow with you only counts for the first person in line. Everybody didn't show up with a red
Get a
cow.
red cow, they might let you in the
They
car.
probably will.
Yep. So it is exciting.
If you could get it on the plane.
I can tell you
That's a
that
red cow.
some of the things that I'm going to share,
Say how big it had to be.
some of the prophecies and understandings of the scriptures that I'm going to share in this series, I've not shared publicly. I've not even talked about them to many people in private setting, because for various reasons I've said, I don't know that I want to get into that. I mean, how do you even open this up? But I've decided now that the way you open it up is you begin at the beginning. I kicked it off, I gave an introduction, I made a few points, but that was just to get people to think that we've got to tie things that take place in the prophets with things that are based and mentioned in the Torah, and all of these texts together present ample material to make some very fundamental claims. And I think, again, this is for Bible-believing people. And it is the subject that is the most essential and bedrock foundational teachings in all of Scripture. And remember, the first thing out of the gate that David said, the object and purposes of United Israel, is to reawaken the lost tribes of Israel to their true identity. And that's what we're going to do.
To be
I believe
prepared
that.
for them.
I believe that.
I think the country of Israel, the behind the scenes guys, the religious part of it.
Yep.
I think they're hashing these things out, how, you know.
Well, and they're
biting
looking.
their nails, so to speak, how are we gonna deal, you know?
Yep.
And they're looking, I watched a couple of programs on that where there are rabbis that are doing outreach, going to different parts, different
Oh, yeah.
countries,
Big thing.
seeking out people that they believe are lost tribe people.
Now, that great point. Good lead in. We'll do some of those too. We have our good friend Simka Yakubovich. He did a series on the search for the tribes. Here's something that I think is interesting. When they find these pockets of people, wherever they find them, and they go, here's some of our people. You know why? Because we found them and they're wearing a kippah, or they're wearing tzitzit, or they don't eat pork and they don't know it. Let me tell you, what we're going to get into is, what does the Bible say they're going to be doing? You ready? You ready?
Yep.
They're going to be pagan as hell.
Yeah.
They're going to be worshiping other gods. They're going to be eating
Yep.
unclean foods.
And the nation of Israel, I do not believe, I'll have to check this out. They're not gonna go out searching for these lost tribes. The lost tribes are gonna come to themselves and
Good
come
point.
back.
How
Come
does
back.
it happen?
Yeah,
How does it
yeah.
happen? Is it because somebody finds them? Now, here's what's
All I
funny.
say is I saw that there are certain rabbis that are out there
Sure,
looking
Sure, yeah.
currently.
Oh, yeah. No, there are some.
They're looking for this, their.
So far, the lost tribes, here we are,
They're looking
they haven't
for,
done
yeah,
that
Jewish,
yet.
what they call Jewish.
Yep.
Tribes, or they don't, well, some of them do call it tribes, and I
Right.
don't know if that's the right use of that word, you know.
It's going to be
I
fun.
don't know.
It's going to be fun because we're going to get into one of the things that I will be very passionate about is getting the terms right.
Yeah.
And look, people are going to get mad at me. They're gonna think you're not hearing me, and I promise you that I am. But I'm going to be a stickler. I'm going to say, listen, if the text says house of Israel, we need to call it what it says. If it says house of Judah, we need to call it. If it mentions Ephraim, you need to know what Ephraim means. If anytime we take a term, we need to use it according to the way that the Bible uses it. So what has happened is terms have become conflated over time. If right now many people take the terms Hebrew, Israelite, and Jew, and they put them all together as meaning the same thing, and they don't.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a big part of what I do is make sure, and sometimes in my head I'm thinking, I'm communicating this right, they're just not getting it, but I'm going to make sure people go, I get it. And that's going to be me using a dry erase board. I'm going to use examples. I'm going to make sure that people get what I'm giving because that's important.
Because the world as it is, you know, if we go out there talking around and 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, 19 out of 20,
Yeah,
people are going to ask you, are you Jewish?
yeah.
Well, in our
That's not-
in our
that's not the right-
technological,
no.
That's not the right question.
That's
in
all
our
they have.
technological society today, with all the communication capability we have, the people out there are clueless. I went, about a year or so ago, at some point in time, back then, year or 2 years, I was going into the hospital to have a medical procedure. And, they're doing the paying for the thing, and they're filling out the forms, and the ladies, asked about religious affiliation.
Right.
And I said,
Other,
I said Hebrew. And she was like,
that works. Yeah.
she
Not
just
one of
looked
your
at me.
choices.
It wasn't one of the choices. I said Jewish. She went, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's not one of the blocks. And see, that's one of the things that people have a problem because you don't have the option to check. It's like Dave said, you almost have to have another block because people don't know. They're like, what am I? And so right now you have groups of people who say, I'm not Jewish, but I follow Judaism. Or they'll say, I've heard the joke, I'm Jewish.
Jewish.
I'm kind of,
You have to write
I'm
it
not
down.
a Jew, but I'm Jewish.
Sounds like the making of a TV show.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you gotta say it like that.
I'm Jewish.
Jewish.
But the idea is that people don't know because they've not been told of this option. And again, there are people who laugh at this and say, "Oh, Ross, you
So-
can't prove. You're just silly."
so, you know, real point, I know you're trying to close out and everything, but, okay, so the chosen people, are you one of the chosen people?
That's
I mean,
the
that's one
question.
way, a good way of looking at it. If you look at that term, the chosen people, we know what that usually means. you know?
For now, you can flip that and say, I'm one of the people who've chosen
Yeah.
to follow the way. And, you know, it's difficult now, but the Bible paints it that way. Hosea talks about the way has been hedged up. And, and there is, excuse me, there's a lot of truth to that, that you can't get in the club. Now, here's what happens. I've seen it. Somebody who feels drawn in this direction will find out that their long lost great grandpappy was Jewish, and then they're in the club, right? They're like, oh, I'm in.
And you
The
aren't.
rest of you aren't.
Nope, y'all aren't.
Well, it's because they settled on the two option criteria. And they said, look, there were only two options. I was a Gentile, I thought this, and now. And the other thing that happens, I see it a lot, people who move into this, they get drawn to the Hebrew Bible. They read so much of this that ultimately they say, I've got to be part of Israel no matter what. What do I need to do?
To become Jewish.
And then once they convert, then they do something very interesting, and it's repeated time and again.
Yep.
They bash
Yep.
the people that are where they
Slam the
were
door shut.
yesterday. Look, I see so much of this in my life. There are people who were fundamentalist, Bible-thumping, evangelical, tongue-talking, Holy Spirit, faith-healing, snake-handling Christians, and they all of a
Wow.
sudden swap over. They're Jewish, and they do nothing but bash the people who are trying to keep Passover in their church. Whereas I now look at that and I go, keep going, baby. You are on the path.
Right.
I don't care where you're at. Because you know what? It becomes this very condescending approach that burns me up now when I see people laughing and making fun of them. And hell, 2 weeks ago they were in the same church. Excuse my French,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
what's going on.
But-
It's
but-
aggravating.
But the truth is that usually, I know I did the same thing, you know, it's pretty much part of what happens, you know, because you're, as you know, you're getting rid of one God in your mind anyway, and then trying to serve the one God.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's just natural to bash.
Yep.
You got to prove it to yourself.
I don't know if you were trying to get rid of him, or you're just going, wait a minute. I've been praying to the wrong God.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
well, the other one might have been a heck of a nice guy.
Well,
yeah.
Wasn't God, you know.
The thing is, more and more
Worship some good
people,
God, yeah.
more and more people are waking up, and you know what? They're waking up. They're waking up with questions.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to bring this in Jeremiah 50. Go to Jeremiah 50, and I'm going to read verse 4 and following. In those days and in that time, saith Jehovah, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together. They shall go on their way weeping, and shall seek Jehovah their God. They shall inquire concerning Zion with their faces turned toward it, saying, Come ye, and join yourself to Jehovah in an everlasting covenant that shall not be forgotten. Picture this. Children of Israel, children of Judah, together, weeping as they go. And as they walk towards Zion, their faces are turned toward it. You're in Zion right now, John, and I'm walking towards you. Me and the children of Judah are walking towards Zion. And we say, excuse me, where is Zion? And you say, well, it's right here. Keep coming. See, what's happening is, it's like a homing that's taking place. It's been compared to, what's that, the movie, something of the third kind, Encounters of the third kind. People are being drawn and they don't even know why. But it's these people have turned their attention towards the thing that God is drawing them towards, and they don't even know that they're headed in the right direction. And that's why I meet people and they say, hey, Ross, I can't go, I can't follow your teaching, I can't sit under your teaching because you don't believe this, there are all these rules. But you know what they say? My family and I are now keeping the Sabbath, and we follow the feast, and, and you know what I do? I tell them, man, I am so excited about this. This is great. You are fulfilling God's drawing on your life, because here's what's happening. We are all waking up, and we are scattered along a spectrum. People are look, right now, today, somewhere in the world, somebody is reading the book called the New Testament, and they are reading for the first time and realizing that Jesus was Jewish. You know what? Some people, no, that's true. You do that, but that happened to you at some point.
I knew when I was reading the scripture.
Well, you were the only one in the world that always recognized that he was Jewish.
How can you not? Never mind.
No, you didn't. If you did in the way I'm talking about, you would have been in this movement, is what I'm saying. So people, what I'm saying, it's not like people go, I never knew he was Jewish. I'm being a little bit overhanded to make the point. People don't take that to its logical conclusions. Like most Christians, did you keep the Torah? No. Most people didn't. You ate unclean foods. But how could people not know that the Bible says to eat? So what I'm saying is people are beginning to wake up to that, for the first time, and they're going, I need to do that.
What kind of fish was that?
Yeah. Well, did that have scales? Did that have fins? So we're all waking up, and we're in different places. But, yeah, I get your point. What I'm trying to say is that there are people who are, wow, I never really saw that.
And like, you've heard this story before. Wife was doing a Christian Bible back in the day.
Yeah.
She was doing a Christian Bible school, and they set up everything just like for the kids, just like a Jewish encampment. And one of the teachers came to her and said, "What do I tell the parents when they ask why we have all this Jewish stuff?" And she said, "Well, just tell them the truth. Tell them Jesus was Jewish."
Yep.
And the woman looked at her and said, "He was?"
Yep.
Now, I'm just saying, not everybody. To
Yeah.
your point.
Yeah. Yeah,
You were being facetious, but you were right. Not everybody believes that.
And most people, most of us are not where we are in our faith. We're in a different place now than we were 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years ago. I think most of us, hopefully all of us, can say, I'm in a better, different place than I was 35 years ago. But as we move forward, and I think it is a moving forward, I don't want to forget where we came from because of something I'll cover in a future class. Jeremiah talks about setting up waymarks. It's like leaving breadcrumbs. If every one of us leave where we were, and I'm not saying you shouldn't leave where you were, but leave where you were and look down on those people who are where you were and leave them to fend for themselves and don't encourage them along the search and the path, that's a sin. And I'll show it to you from Scripture. In fact, I'll give the hint now. If anybody reads Ezekiel 34, and they can continue to bash those who occupy a place that they simply were in a few weeks or months or years ago, you ought to read it again. And if you can still do it, read it again. And if you can still do it, you need to find something else to do with your life because you're cold-hearted and you don't care about the ways of God.
We truly are our brother's keepers.
We are.
We really are. It's
Yeah.
really up to us.
Well, I heard somebody once say, "Don't spit in the well you came from." So
That's right.
I always like that one.
That's right. Yeah, we have.
Put it another way, man.
Yeah, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. I think that the path is open before us and the way is charted in Scripture. And I think that it's an incredible journey. It's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah, your class is hopeful that our viewers, and myself included, we will come to a better, clearer understanding of this, and then maybe start being able to share and communicate
Yeah.
Easier,
Yep,
with better understanding or clearer to other people
that's right.
that come along.
That's the key, Dave. If you can't explain it,
Yeah.
and you can't help people along the way, I think then that's a problem. And it's not it's not something we set out to do. Like you mentioned, Dave. I think once you realize, man, I was wrong, and now I've found some truth. Some of us don't mean to be condescending.
It's like ex-boss, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
some people
Yeah.
do. There was like the lady that joined us, and her and her husband were in a Christian setting, and they started reading the Hebrew Bible and started putting all this out, and eventually they got kind of like ostracized from the Christian community in a bad way. So, yeah, there are people out there. It doesn't have to be. You moved on. You learned. You studied, you strive for being better, more knowledgeable, and, dishing the people that you left behind. Sometimes it's the people that are left behind that are dishing the ones that moved on because, stone the infidel.
Oh, it's both.
Yeah.
It's both. Yeah,
And it shouldn't be that way.
that's right.
And I hate it. I should have started out this conversation with this thought. I mean, it's basically about waking up, sleeping, coming to the awareness. And just this morning, when I woke up, I shared it with a couple of y'all. I usually wake up pretty groggy. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what. You gotta share. She was trying to wake me up, and I couldn't hear her. I mean, I was starting to wake up, and I was real drowsy, and she was saying something. I couldn't quite understand what she was saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't help but just say, there's some kind of analogy there going
Yeah.
on. It's like, at some point I finally woke up after I told her, I said, I can't hear you. What are you saying?
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say something?
yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
a process.
So
The
waking up
awakening
thing.
is a process.
Also, the Torah talks about, I think it's in the Torah, I hope, sometimes I get them mixed up as far as, anyhow, it's in the Proverbs, about don't wake up a man suddenly or a person suddenly. I don't know, it's been so long since I read that. In other words, the thought was, wake somebody up gently, you don't just wake up and, startle them.
Well, and there's so much of this material that has to be carefully presented. So, people are doing a good job to try to convey it. But what I hope to do with this is give logical sessions where you can take it. Hey, have you ever considered this? Who is the seed of Abraham? Let's talk about that subject matter. And let's look at those patriarchal promises, and let's map this out, and let's get into the prophets, and what do the prophets say about who is Israel? And I know there are people out there that go, oh, that's easy, it's this, and just you don't need to listen to that, if this person, whatever. Okay, but what I want to do is do a meticulous, careful reading of the text, work through these things, and really demonstrate that the Bible has plenty of information here if we take the time to truly sort through it and weed through it. And we've got a good team, not only here at the table, but in our internet audience. And I want you to be thinking about this too. And let's help get this message out. And I would encourage you, I can't make you be one way or the other, but I would encourage you to be kind and considerate of those who are just beginning this journey. I know there's some that say, well, I can't associate with that people because they are worshiping, the wrong way. Okay, well, then go find your perfect group and be part of that, and thank God that you're so holy. But I don't believe like that, and I think we ought to try to reach out and help people. So hopefully, as people find their way onto this path, they, like you, and you, and you, and you, are being drawn by someone more important than we are. The true shepherd, Ezekiel 34, is very upset with those who are supposed to be shepherding the flock because they have led the people astray. And he also gets mad at some of the sheep who have found good pastures and good water, because it says you butt them away and you take your filthy little feet and you muddy up the water so that they can't have fresh water.
Right.
And that's this arrogance that comes out among people who found the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, is they get into this mode that, thank God I made it, get away, thou bad one. You know, it's just ridiculous. So we're going to have fun. I'm going to be real passionate about this. Again, it's very important that we take it in chunks, if you will, and bite-sized pieces, because there's a lot of material to cover. So hopefully, most of you can help me to spread the message. Next week, we're going to be talking about Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. We're going to begin at the beginning. The beginning is the story of one man's family. So what is it that God promises, and does that give us any clues that bring us into the prophetic literature and into the present day? So hopefully you can join us and help us let others know about this. Tell them to listen to this class today and then join us next week. Thanks for joining us. You guys have anything to add? I kind of wrapped it up there on my end, at least.
Be good.
So help us spread it, and we'll see you next week, 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, here in St. Francisville, or on YouTube or Facebook Live. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat.